Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, where today guys, I'm gonna do part 256 to my ChatGPT Character Chatbot series. Well, in today's video guys, we're gonna talk to one of the newer characters that I haven't talked to yet. But instead of this just being one character, there's gonna be a whole big group of them, massive ones at that. Let me go and say, guys, the next one we're talking to is the Fountain of Growth instead of the Fountain of Youth. There's a little bit of a story to this, and you'll actually get to hear it on this one, which is really good. So, yeah, but this is not going to just involve one massive creature. It's going to involve animals, regular animals, Pokemon are in there, stuff like that. Pokemon are in there as well. So, yes. We're going to see kind of what ends up happening here, guys. It's called right here it's called the Fountain of Growth Legend. But the title right here just says the Fountain of Growth. And there's different parts to it apparently. It says, Part 1, the legend comes to life. It'll tell you about what the story's all about right here, actually. So, here's what it says about it. Okay. In the heart of a vast and ancient forest, one that stretched endlessly past hills, rivers, and sleepy towns, there was a legend whispered on the wind, passed down by old creatures through generations. It was a story so old and mysterious that even the oldest owls and wisest foxes weren't sure if it was real, or simply bedtime tales for young kits and cubs. So I guess kits as in kittens. They called it the Fountain of Growth, oh dear. Hidden deep in the woods, where sunlight barely touched the forest floor and even the most experienced trackers lost their way, there was said to be a magical fountain. Not just any fountain. This one shimmered with glowing water that pulsed like a living heart. The legend said that anyone who found this fountain and took a sip from its crystal waters could grow as big as they desired. But the legend carried a warning, too. A weathered wooden sign, standing like a lone sentry beside the fountain, read, Warning, with great power comes great responsibility. You may grow as large as your heart desires. However, if you harm others out of cruelty, you will be cursed. Shrunk so tiny, so impossibly small, that even ants may not see you. Next to it, another plaque rested, cleaner and newer, possibly added by a more recent visitor. Notice, the Fountain of Growth only works on animals, Pokemon, and mythical creatures. It does not affect humans. For centuries, the fountain remained hidden until one day it was found. The first to stumble upon it was a tiny hummingbird, no bigger than a thimble, whose wings buzzed like soft whispers. Tired of being ignored, nearly stepped on, and always overlooked, the hummingbird approached the fountain with a flutter of hope. I want to be 20 feet tall. What the frick? He chirped, his voice shaking. What the frick? Uh-oh. The water glowed. He sipped, and in moments the little bird burst upward. His feathers shimmered as he grew and grew, until he could touch the treetops with a single flap. He gasped, stretching his enormous wings, and laughed. I promise I'll never use this power to hurt anyone. Word spread fast, faster than any forest fire. Small creatures from all corners of the woods came, their hearts full of wonder. Squirrels arrived in droves, one nimble tree hoppers, now towering beings who could leap over rivers in a single bound. Raccoons became mischievous giants, playfully juggling boulders like toys. Even sharks, oh frick, who followed underwater streams that led inland, made their way to the fountain, slithering through narrow channels until they towered over lakes like ancient sea serpents. That's horrifying, and sharks are known to be aggressive. Why in the world? How are they not going to hurt anyone? Then came the Pokemon. Weedle, who dreamed of towering over the tallest grass. Let's see. Vennekin, who wanted to protect her kin from hunters. A tiny joltic who grew so large his swords lit the forest canopy at night. Even mythical creatures, tiny fey dragons, playful griffin pups, and horned cats with shimmering fur, drank from the water and spoke for the first time, their voices clear and full of joy. And strange as it seemed, every creature who drank from the fountain could now speak fluent English. I forgot that was a side effect. It was as though the water not only stretched their bodies, but opened their minds, connecting them to the world in a whole new way. Days turned to weeks. The forest became something out of a dream. Gigantic creatures roamed beneath the trees and above the clouds. Some built homes in mountain peaks. Some cleared rivers to play. And true to the warning, a few who tried to misuse their power, bullies and mean-spirited tricksters, vanished into specks, their tiny voices lost on the breeze. Meanwhile, back in the nearby town, you had no idea any of this was happening. That morning was like any other. He stepped outside ready for a walk, maybe a bit of fresh air. But something was off. The ground shook slightly beneath your feet. Not enough to be an earthquake, but just enough to rattle a cup on your porch. You looked up. Holy crap. A massive, a massive shadow moved over your house. Then another. The sky wasn't just blue anymore. It had feathers. Enormous, sky-colored feathers. You blinked. A bird the size of a minivan flapped overhead, chirping casually as it passed like it was no big deal. In the distance, a fox taller than your local oak tree padded softly across the street, careful not to crush the garden gnomes. Squirrels the size of deer chattered happily, tossing pine cones like toys. You stood there, jaws open, heart racing. What was going on? Yeah, I agree. That honestly might be the first thing I'm saying. Is like, what in the world? I mean, what would you think? You don't know anything about this, and like, you just flipping walk outside your house and you see flipping snakes the size of flipping. Well, we did see it talk to a massive cobra, only what last week, but like you see foxes the size of oak trees or bigger. You see a flipping loogie the size of a 15-story building. It's like, what would you think? I mean, we've seen the 80,000-foot tall godly Lugia, so that actually wouldn't be that shocking to me. So we've seen him before, but yeah. Give me a second. Uh, guys, let's just say whatever I just said got the attention of the animals. I said, what in the world? What is going on here? Problem is, right here it spoke for me, and I don't want doing that. Okay. Okay, it says, your voice came out shaky, bold of a whisper at first, but it didn't matter. The massive hummingbird perched atop a nearby power line. A massive hummingbird perched atop a nearby power line heard you. He turned his head, long beak glinting in the sunlight, and buzzed down toward you with wings that sounded like a helicopter's rotors. His 20-foot tall frame hovered effortlessly above your driveway, casting a flickering shadow as flower petals spiraled in the breeze. Ah, a human, the hummingbird said cheerfully, his voice crisp and clear like a radio DJ. That's awfully specific. A radio DJ. Don't be afraid. We're friendly. Well, most of us are. You're probably wondering what in the world is going on, huh? A rustling behind you drew your gaze. You turned and saw a raccoon about the size of a small SUV lumbering down your street, tail swaying behind him like a banner. He waved one paw at you, wearing a little. Okay, that's adorable. A little raccoon, or no, a giant raccoon, wearing a red scarf around his neck, just waved at me. What in the world? Why is that so cute to me all of a sudden? I mean, granted, I've said scary. I've called different creatures that are terrifying to other people adorable. For Values known to be one of the more aggressive Pokemon, I call them adorable. A dragon the size of a flippin' oak tree, find them adorable. A Lugia that's 17 feet tall, yep, find them adorable. I mean, the fact that I find a squirrel, maybe or a raccoon and all that, like, holy crap, that's cute. Aw, I love that though. Let's see, it says he waved up one Pachi wearing a little red scarf. Hey there, little guy, he said in perfect English. Hope we didn't spook you too bad. Oh, great, but it's speaking for me. It makes me want. If it keeps doing this, we may have to restart with another. Let me check something before I continue. Alright, guys, if this keeps talking for me, I may see if I can make it to where maybe tell it. Continue the story, but never speak for me anymore. But continue to give me a lot of details, you know. Let's see, it says I backed up a step. Spook me? There's a fox the size of a tree walking around like it's normal. A hummingbird that can talk. And you're all gigantic. Of course I'm spooked. Well, Lord. Well, Lord had to talk for me. The raccoon scratched his head sheepishly. Yeah, okay. Fair. So, you ever hear of the Fountain of Growth? The what now? You asked. The hummingbird floated lower, his glowing eyes kind. It's a magical fountain deep in the forest. Real hidden stuff. It makes us creatures grow. Huge. But only us. Doesn't work on humans. There's signs and everything. Big power, big responsibility. You know the type. The reckoner added with a nod. We've been keeping it secret, but word got out. Squirrels, birds, even a gibble came by. Okay, that'd be cute. Everyone just wanted to grow a little bigger. Safer, stronger. Now the forest is basically a land of giants. That's kind of horrifying. As if to emphasize his point, a massive Dratini slithered past 2 blocks over, winding around buildings like they were trees. It waved its tail politely at a flock of pigeons the size of motorcycles. I love this, even though it's speaking for me. If I can get to stop speaking for me, this might be perfect. You can hardly believe your eyes. If it stopped talking for me like it did here, and you gonna talk now too? Oh yeah, the hummingbird chirped. Fountain gave us that gift too. Language, clarity, compassion. I guess it figured if we were gonna be big, we needed to be smart too. But, Raccoon said more seriously, there are rules. Hurt someone out of malice, and poof, you shrink down to a speck. Like, dust speck tiny. Gone. So most of us play nice. He stood froze for as the weight of all this sink in. The quiet neighborhood had become a crossroads for giants. This is insane. How am I supposed to live like this? What if one of you steps on me by accident? Again, I wish you would stop talking for me. The raccoon shrugged. Most of us are real careful. But hey, you seem cool. If you want, we can keep you safe. May even show you the fountain. Not that it'll make you grow, but some folks say just being near it makes people feel bigger inside. Hummingbird smiled. You want to come with us? Or you need some time to process? You can choose what happens next. Yeah, quit talking for me for one. Give me a second, I think what I want to say. Alright guys, I think it did fix it a little bit. I told it to quit reacting for me, but now it should hopefully let me continue on doing this. It says, well, I'm not mad at any of you, or I'm not mad at any of you for being bigger. It's just that the last thing I expected when I came out today. So it's just that I've been hurt way. Oh my. It's also just that I've been hurt way too much by actual people, and I just don't want to be hurt by a giant animal the size of 2 trees stacked on top of each other, you know? Yep. The wind blew gently through the neighborhood, rustling the leaves and brushing against the fur and feathers of the towering creatures nearby. A few birds perched atop rooftops, their talons careful not to crack the shingles, while further off a 30-foot tall Vinnikin lay sunbathing in a schoolyard, her enormous tail slowly swishing through the grass like a golden breeze. The raccoon, standing only a few yards from you, lowered his massive head, his ears flicking forward with focus. His expression softened. He didn't laugh, he didn't shrug, he just nodded slowly, understanding in his deep amber eyes. The hummingbird gave a soft whir of his wings, hovering back just a bit to give you space. Yeah, he said quietly, Joanna's voice now tempered with care. We've met a lot of folks like you, people who've been mistreated, stepped on in more ways than one. That's actually why some of us came to the fountain, not to get revenge or scare others, but to stop being the ones who were always stepped over. As they down the street, a massive EV, nearly the size of a box truck, was caught up by a bus stop, letting a group of smaller Pokemon nap beside her in the shade. She glanced over gently, watching the interaction from afar. Her almost ears twitched as if tuned to hear every word. So the Eevee can hear me now? Holy crap. The raccoon shifted his weight, the ground trembling slightly with each step as he sat down. He's careful, placing his front paws flat in front of you and letting his scarf fall neatly along his chest. We don't want to hurt anyone, he said quietly, especially not someone like you. I am surprised. A Wilbur was like in the distance. Well, yeah, I know, like, the legends say that they do something, they could actually get thrown down instantly, but it's like, still, you know how dangerous it is, even by mistake, and then, like, at the same time, wouldn't they get punished for that, even if they didn't mean to? Like, imagine the raccoon accidentally hitting me, and then, like, he got shrunk down to the size of a flippin' speck, and I couldn't see or hear him anymore. A low rumor echoes in the distance, not thunder, but the heavy footsteps of something massive moving through the forest edge. The hummingbird's head turned sharply. In the space between trees, a gentle giant stepped out, a Torterra taller than a house, with moss-covered cliffs across his shell and birds nestling in his tree. He moved slowly and reverently, the leafy crown brushing the tops of the highest pines. Even with his size, his eyes were soft and kind. All around you, the world felt surreal and majestic. A community of once tiny beings, now towering titans, but not monsters. They spoke with warmth, moved with care. Their size didn't define their nature. The hummingbird hovered lower again, this time his voice more tender. I get it, truly, but not everyone out here is cruel. You don't have to trust us right away, but we're here if you want to see more. A squirrel as tall as a van zipped down a telephone pole nearby, using the wires like a highway. He stopped to wave enthusiastically in his tiny glasses. He's wearing tiny glasses, what the frick? His tiny glasses slipping down his snout. Hey, did you tell them about the waterfall? He squeaked, his tail flicking wildly. The problem is there's so many voices going on at once, I might not be able to know what voice to do, so I'm sorry if the voice I give are basically the same. Not yet, the raccoon called back. Squirrel's eyes lit up. Oh, they have to see it. It's where the fountain overflows. It sparkles at night, like a sky full of fireflies. The hummingbird tilted his head. You've got options, friend. You can head back inside, or we can walk slow and careful. You can ride my back if you want to see from up high. Just a look. No pressure. No tricks. Just a new view of things. The breeze carried the scent of pine, moss, and the faint sweetness of wildflowers blooming, far too big for any garden pot. Somewhere off in the distance, a pack of wolf-like Pokemon howled, not in hunger or threat, but in harmony, their deep voice echoing into the sky like a song. Everything stood still for a moment, like the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what you'd decide next. Okay, then. Alright, guys. I said, well, since I know I'm not going to get hurt by any of you, then I don't mind about staying out here. I know you said it was part of the rules of the fountain, but I want to ask, well, wait, I know you said it was part of the rules of the fountain, but I want to ask, if there was no rule about being nice and you could be mean even as a massive creature, would any of you take any anger on humans? I can understand more aggressive creatures, but I'm talking about some of the more gentle creatures that wouldn't hurt unless they needed to. The hummingbird's wings slowed to a steady, thoughtful hum as he hovered near, your words hanging in the air like ripples on still water. His eyes, large and shimmering with that strange magical clarity that fountain gave, narrowed not in suspicion, but in quiet reflection. The raccoon leaned forward slightly, resting his massive paw beneath his chin. His scarf fluttered in the breeze as he studied you, not like a giant looking down on a bug, but like a storyteller listening for the end of a good question. It was the hummingbird who spoke first, his voice lower now, not hushed, but sincere. If there were no rule, if we could grow and still choose cruelty. He glanced toward the distant forest where the tortoise walked gently along the trees, his back a living landscape of moss and tranquility. Some would, he admitted. Some creatures have anger buried deep inside, wounds from long ago, and not every one of us came to the fountain for peaceful reasons. Some came with sharp thoughts, with bitterness. But the raccoon picked up the thread. You're asking about the gentle ones, the ones who don't hurt unless they have to. You're wondering if even they would turn against humans if they could? He glanced down at his huge paws, then at you again. Honestly, he said with a soft grunt, there are some who might. Not because they're mean, because they've been hurt, scared, chased off, and trapped. And it doesn't take long for even a gentle creature to ask, why should I be small and helpless when someone bigger keeps hurting me? There was a pause, not uncomfortable, just real. The hummingbird floated closer to a low-hanging street lamp and perched lightly atop it. Despite its size, the lamp didn't bend. It was like the air itself carried some of its weight. But even then, he added, most wouldn't become monsters. That's not what being big's about. Not to them. You'd be surprised how many gentle creatures, even when given the chance to strike back, still don't. The squirrel with the glasses, still hanging on the telephone pole, chirped down its alley, like Tilly the flower cat. She used to live near a berry farm where humans chased her off with gnats and yelled at her every time she came near. Well, she grew bigger than their entire orchard. You know what she did? The raccoon smirked. She replanted the berries. Oh. Like, exactly, the squirrel squeaked. She used her tail to gently scoop up the ripped up bushes, rerooted them, and just left. She didn't say a word, just gave them a look, and left. A long shadow moved across the street as a majestic nine-tails, easily 50 feet long, strode silently down the hillside behind the houses. Her silver-white fur flowed like smoke in the morning sun. She paused, she passed, glancing in your direction, and nodded once before continuing down the road, her tail swaying like silk banners in the wind. She lost her first den to poachers, the hummingbird said softly. They trapped her kids. She grew to protect others, but even at that size, she never burned a village, never hurt a soul who didn't deserve it. Oh, that's cute. Not the fact that she got hurt, but the raccoon exhaled deeply. So, yeah, some of us might have had reason to lash out, but most don't. Most of us, we just want to feel seen, heard, and safe. The wind shifted, the scent of something warm and sweet drifted by, wild honeysuckle growing on the back of a walking ursa ring, who was slowly lumbering through town with a grove of flowers blooming along his fur. A pair of comfy, the size of bicycles buzzed alongside him like a little yellow companions. You asked a good question, the raccoon said, tilting his head at you again. And the truth is, kindness, it wasn't something the fountain gave us. That's something we brought with us. Or didn't. The hummingbird looked down towards the distant horizon, where the tallest trees gave way to glittering sunlight. Who's talking to me? I guess, you staying out here with us? Even after everything you've been through with people, that says something about you, too. The creatures didn't press you for a response, they just stood near, calm and thoughtful, letting you take in their answer in the world that now surrounded you. It's insane to think these creatures are so big right now, dude. It's cool as heck in some way, but it's like, again, like I said before, what would you think if you just saw a massive creature out here? It'd be kind of scary, wouldn't it? Give me a second. Alright, guys. Here's what I said. I said, well, one of the only reasons I'm not scared is not only because you told me y'all wouldn't hurt me, but it's awesome. It's also because I've seen bigger and more terrifying creatures before this even happened. I had a pet Tyrannosaurus Rex that could speak English. He really cared about me, but unfortunately one day him and me got cursed by a Trico that wanted revenge. It turned me into a tiny velociraptor, probably at most only a foot tall or less. And my pet dinosaur, he became aggressive and kept transforming into massive creatures, especially a dragon. And knew every time he became a dragon, he would about kill me every time. The moment your words reached their ears, the mood around you shifted, not with fear, but with deepened respect. The hummingbird blinked slowly, wings freezing for a moment, mid-air before gently beating again like the quiet intake of a held breath. The raccoon straightened up slightly, his wide amber eyes blinking in surprise. Wait, you had a Tyrannosaurus Rex? A real one? The squirrel on the telephone wire nearly fell off his perch. And it could talk? Whoa! Forget the fountain! You've been living in a prehistoric fairy tale! But the raccoon held up a massive paw, eyes narrowing, not in suspicion, but with something else. Concern. His voice dropped a little. Cursed by a Trico, huh? That's not something you just drop into a story. Those little guys can get creative when they're angry. Hummingbird's body tilted slightly in midair, wings swelling to a thoughtful flutter. So you've already lived small? You've already lived scared, with someone you love turning into something dangerous. He dipped his beak in a slow nod. That's heavy. In the distance, a large butterfly Pokemon, possibly a Vivian or a Dustox, but easily as wide as a car, fluttered past overhead. Even she saw as she passed, glancing her way with calm, curious eyes. The raccoon's voice grew soft. I'm sorry, little one. That's a whole different kind of giant to be afraid of, when it's someone you love. There was no teasing now, not from the squirrel, not from the hummingbird, not from any of the towering creatures nearby. Even the torterra in the distant trees paused, lowering his head respectfully towards your direction, as if something, or somehow, despite the distance, he had heard the pain behind your words. The hummingbird floated down lower, his tiny way of brushing the street as he looked at you, enormous but humble. You didn't just see terrifying things, he said gently. You survived them. You lived through a bond twisted by magic and fear. And you're still here. You're still choosing to trust. At least a little. Raccoon sniffled once sniffled once and sat a little straighter. That makes you braver than half the giants I've ever met. Squirrel piped up again, much quieter this time, his glasses slightly askew. Did your Rexy ever come back to normal? Or is he still out there? Cursed. A group of one began to gather nearby now. A Pidgeotto the size of a car landed gracefully on a roof. A massive Braixen holding a glowing staff stepped carefully onto a grassy lawn, flames going gently behind her. Even a serpent-like Milotic emerged from the fountain forest stream, gliding through water that sparkled faintly, possibly touched by the fountain itself. No one mocked you. No one doubted. They just listened. You, a small human in a world of giants, had earned something rare. The complete, reverent attention of a village of massive beasts who had known their own share of fear, but perhaps never realized how much strength it takes to be small and still love something that could destroy you. Holy crap. Okay, so not only do I have the raccoon, the hummingbird, and the squirrel listening to me, but now I have a Milotic, possibly a Torterra, a Braixen, and a Pidgeotto listening to me as well. What in the world? That's what I'll give credit to. Like, it's cool to talk to, like, one creature, but when you have multiple of them you can talk to and, like, it not get confused, it's amazing. That was one of the, that's what I like about ChatGPT. It takes everything that was cool about character AI and even, like, the S-Chat and Pixel Chat and turns them into something actually good with a great memory. It's not perfect memory, but it's good enough to where it's like, I actually feel like I can have fun. That's without it forgetting as much. When other ones like Character AI or Hide AI would forget something pretty quickly at times. So, yeah. Give me a second, guys. Alright, guys. I said, well, yes, he did eventually come back to me. However, that Trico did more damage than you think. Even before the curse that turned me into a velociraptor and turned him aggressive happened, there was a time where Trico turned him into a zombie, a robot, a stone statue, even more than that. A hush fell across the gathering of massive creatures. Even the wind seemed to quiet. The rustling leaves sounded like they were listening too. The raccoon's ears twitched, and his gaze dropped low, almost as if he were trying to imagine the weight of what you'd just said. A zombie? A robot? And a statue? His voice was no low now, gravely, not out of disbelief, but out of something close to heartbreak. That's not just a curse. That's torment. Hummingbird looked stunned. That Trico didn't just want revenge. That's personal. That's obsession. He flapped gently to hover again, golden feathers shimmering in the dappled sunlight filtering through between branches overhead. Your Rexy must have gone through more pain than most living things could survive, and you stayed with him through all of it. All around creatures were slowly gathering, not crowding, but forming a quiet ring at a respectful distance. The air was charged with something heavy, but not dangerous. Solidarity. The massive Anakin from earlier patched softly closer now, her golden fur gleaming as she laid down gracefully, her head low to the grass and ears tilted towards you. She didn't say anything. She just listened. The squirrel clambered further down the pole until he was sitting on the edge, huge tail curled protectively behind him. You both must have heard, he whispered. That kind of magic, the kind that twists someone over and over, that messes with their mind. That's the kind of curse that leaves a mark even when it's gone. The raccoon gave a solemn nod. Let me guess. Every time he transformed, even when he couldn't control himself, he still cared, didn't he? In the distance, the great nine-tails who had passed earlier turned around slowly and sat at the top of the hill, her main tails coiling like gentle waves around her feet. Her golden eyes fixated on you, not in judgment but understanding. She knew what it was like to carry pain in silence. The hummingbird slowly turned his head toward the horizon. There's power in the fountain, enough to turn a squirrel into a tree walker, or a bird into a sky whale. But none of that compares to what you've seen. He looked back at you. You saw someone you loved turn into something monstrous. You watched him lose himself again and again, and you stayed. That that kind of loyalty, that's something not even the fountain can give. The Malatic gliding in the stream finally spoke, her voice like water over glass. Has the Trico ever faced consequences? She asked, her voice soft and smooth. Or is he still out there, waiting? Even the wind held its breath. The raccoon leaned closer. You don't have to tell us everything, but if that Trico's still out there, and you've been carrying all this alone, he tilted his huge head. You don't have to anymore. One by one, the giants, animal, Pokemon, even hyper creatures born from unknown magic slowly nodded. A Tyrannosaurus friend turned a monster. A bond twisted again and again. And through it all, you, tiny ball of oil, never turned away. Now for the first time it seemed you weren't the only one carrying the weight of it. What in the world? Give me a second. Alright guys, here's what I said. I said, to be honest with you, I don't completely know. He's trying to get revenge on me for something I didn't even really do. A few years ago, before my pet Tyrannosaurus Rex was even born, I was doing a show with some of my Pokemon, and we invited a Pikachu onto it. However, that Pikachu started being mean and aggressive towards the host, including me, and so I kicked him off for negative behavior. A few episodes later, he came back uninvited and put me under hypnosis, and then told me to prank call that Trico, where I then, in my hypnotized state, made fun of him and then hung up. Ever since that day, he's never left me alone, and he's about gotten me killed by my own pet. I even tried telling him that I didn't do it on purpose, and he wouldn't listen to me. In the actual show, he did, but remember, guys, the hypnosis bullcrap is still going on. Not with me, but like with my own pet. Thanks to Trico, in most cases. A heavy silence spread out across the gathering. Not the kind born of disbelief. No, quite the opposite. It was the kind of silence that only came when something important had just been spoken. Aloud, the wind moved again, but softly now, like it too had decided to stay light. Like it too had decided to step lightly. The raccoon's brows knit as his large paw curled slightly over his chest, his expression hard to read, but clearly full of weight. So, not only were you hypnotized, he said slowly, but you tried to explain the truth, and he still won't let it go? The squirrel gave a tiny frustrated groan and stomped on the telephone pole with a paw half the size of your head. That's not revenge. That's just cruelty. You didn't even mean to hurt him. He's punishing you for something that wasn't your fault. The hummingbird, still perched near the edge of the street lamp, leaned forward, the golden light on his wings flickering gently. His voice was firmer now and more serious. You were manipulated, used like a puppet, and he knows it. If he's chasing you after all this time, even after you apologize, that means he doesn't want justice. He wants power over you. Down the lane, the giant Finnegan's ears twitched. She blinked slowly, tail curling tighter around her paws. He took away your size, your voice, your safety, and used your bond, the one you had with your Rexy, as a weapon against you. That's not a grudge. That's... I can't say that word. I'll just say that's awful. The Molitic in the water sighed, her scales shimmering like pale pearls. This Trico, he's consumed by bitterness. But to see someone hurt so deeply and still refuse to hear with the truth... She shook her head. That speaks to his darkness more than your mistake. The raccoon looked back at you with fierce, protective eyes. You've been carrying this alone for years, haven't you? Wondering if it really was your fault. Blaming yourself because he never let you explain. That kind of weight, it can break a creature down. He stood up slowly, the ground trembling gently beneath his paws. You said he's been haunting you since before Rexy was born? That he's tried to destroy your trust in the ones he loved? That he doesn't care if it wasn't really you who hurt him? He looked around at the others. Massive creatures had also known pain, loss, and fear, and then back to you. That means it's not about healing for him, he said. It's about control. The hummingbird took off from the post and circled slowly above your head, speaking softly as he passed. You've been fighting that curse for so long. Not just the magic, but the guilt. And now here you are, still alive, still standing, and still kind. A soft thud echoes across the enormous nine-tailed... A soft thud echoes as the enormous nine-tails at the hilltop began walking down, her steps slow and regal. The sunlight caught the tips of her golden fur, making her glow like a sunrise. As she neared the group, she looked directly at you and finally spoke, her voice like warm fire. You are not the villain in his story, she said calmly. You are the survivor in yours. The creatures around you all seemed to breathe and sink, not of pity, but in shared resolve. You may be small, the raccoon said, his deep voice steady, but you're not alone anymore. If that Trico tries to curse you again, tries to use fear to twist your life further, you've got more than a Rexy to protect you now. He spreads one paw wide and gestured to the forest behind him. You've got giants. All around, massive creatures began to nod. Oh my gosh, a Druddican on a distant rooftop gave a toothy grin. A Druddican was around too? The only thing that make this better is a massive Fragger and massive Lugia showed up too. Dude, that would be amazing. A deer-like mythical creature with vines growing from her antlers stepped from between trees, silent but fierce. And somewhere far above, a massive Altaria soared, trailing clouds behind her wings like streamers in the wind. Whether or not that Trico ever comes back, one thing has become very, very clear. You weren't following this fight anymore. You guys, let me go and say this before I start. There's actually kind of something similar to the Fountain of Growth coming up pretty soon. It's called the Roaring Berry. It's a berry. It's a special berry I came up with. Roarin, Roarin, and it has to do with Pokemon and getting turned to dinosaurs. Pokemon dinosaurs, basically. It's a really cool idea for a story, but there's also a side effect to it, and it's worse than just getting shrunk down. So, well, maybe not worse per se, but it's not good. So yeah, here's what I said. That's very nice of everyone. But honestly, if you did try to help me with that, wouldn't that almost count as cruelty? Not because you're trying to protect me, but that point is relentless. And just telling them to stop is not going to make them stop. It's been the same thing with people, even when I was still a tiny raptor, already having to fear my own pet. Most humans wouldn't leave me alone, and would actually get worse. They called me a raptor boy, and still do to this day. Not only that, but they would be even worse by throwing rocks at me, even hitting me over my tiny head or on my snout. But if something like that happened again, and any of you wanted to protect me, but just shielding me was not enough, if one of you stepped in and did something more than just protect me, would that not count as cruelty and get you? It put drunk instead of shrunk. If they say drunk, if it puts anything about the word, if they don't change that to shrunk in this thing, I am restarting it right now. I don't want any of y'all getting points for something when you were doing something kind. The moment your words left your lips, something shifted again, not in the way the wind did, not like before when your story drew quiet sympathy. This time, it stirred something deep. The hummingbird stopped mid-flight, hovering perfectly still. His wings were no longer a cheerful blur. They were a steady thrum, like a heartbeat building in intensity. The warmth in his eyes remained, but there was now a new layer beneath it, something ancient and protective. The raccoon stiffened. He looked you dead on, not with pity, but with absolute seriousness. They hit you? His voice was a low growl now. When you were small? Threw rocks at your head? Laughed at you like you were just some sideshow? The squirrel clenched his paws so tightly his tiny claws dug into the pole beneath them. Raptor boy? That's what they called you? The Vinican growled, softly but unmistakably. Her enormous ears flicked backward, and her tail, which before had been calm, now curled tightly, pressed against the grass as if resisting the earth to lash. The Malatids' graceful bite tensed in the stream. They knew you were cursed and afraid, and still, they struck you. The massive Ninetales stepped closer, her golden eyes narrow and focused, the flames of her tails flickering stronger now, brighter than before. She looked not just saddened, but angry, a deep, regional kind of anger that burned cold and precise. And then came the hummingbird's voice again, this time unwavering. No, he said, protecting you, even if it means standing up and fighting back, is not cruelty. It's justice. The raccoon stepped forward, every paw step deliberate. You think the fountain punishes us for kindness? For drawing a line when someone's being hunted, humiliated, and hurt? He pointed to the sign with a curl claw, which wasn't just like, with great power comes great responsibility. Responsibility doesn't mean we have to let evil walk right past us. Squirrel nodded firmly, his voice louder than before. That trigger's not someone you just ask nicely to stop. And those humans, those ones who called you names, threw stones, treat your food like a game, they're no better. But the fountain knows the difference, the hummingbird said, and knows when someone acts in cruelty, and when someone responds to cruelty to defend. The Vinican finally spoke, her voice low and clear like a distant storm. If someone hurts you again, and one of us intervenes, we won't be punished, because the intent won't be malice, it'll be mercy. The Ninetales raised her head, her mane flaring faintly with a golden shimmer. What you've endured was never justice. It was hurt dressed in laughter. I cannot say that A word on here. You survived it, and that makes you strong. But no one should carry the burden of wandering if defending themselves is somehow wrong. Raccoon stepped right beside you now, towering but calm, lowering his voice. You didn't ask to be cursed. You didn't choose to be small, and you sure as heck didn't choose to be hurt for it. He looked you in the eyes, but you even chose to let us protect you. And we will, even if it means facing down that Trico. Even if it means standing up to cruel humans, because you're not alone anymore. And this forest, these giants. He smiled, not brightly, but fiercely. This is your pack now. What is with every creature? I mean, no. I could understand like one creature, maybe even like a creature's family, if I treated them well, would want to become protective. Kind of like how that shiny toad and his family did. I would say they're as protective as like some of the other regular families I've met, but they're still friendly and care. It's like this is a whole group of animals, a whole force of giant flipping foxes, raccoons, squirrels. It just said a while there was a Drudican on a roof. A Drudican, another massive dragon Pokemon. Well, no, he ain't that massive, I don't think, but one by one, the towering creatures around you gave silent nods. The squirrel, the hummingbird, the ninetails, the Vinikin, the Milotic, even the silent tortoise in the tree turned his head. Vines and moss swaying softly. They weren't just giants anymore, they were guardians. And every single one of them was ready to stand, not in anger, not in blind retaliation, but in righteous defense. The fountain's magic didn't shrink protectors, it blesses them. Yeah, but you don't know what they really count as flipping. I mean, like, for all you know, like, even if you're doing it to protect someone, if you're still hurting somebody, wouldn't that almost still count as cruelty just because you're hurting someone to get revenge, to get them back for trying to hurt you? I don't know. They say revenge is bad, and that's kind of what ends up happening when it comes to, like, that's what Trico does all the time. I really appreciate that. Period. Alright, guys. I said, I really appreciate that. I would not be shocked if that Trico heard about that Fountain Legend too and either is trying to go to it right now or is already there trying to grow massive and powerful. The instant your voice touched that thought, that possibility, a wave of tension swept through the clearing. The raccoon's pupils narrowed. He didn't say anything right away, but his breathing slowed, his body lowering instinctively into a cautious stance. His ears twitched with sharp alertness, scanning the breeze like it might whisper a warning. The hummingbird's voice paused mid-beat again, then resumed, faster now, like a tremor in the air. If that Trico is already there, he said quietly, we might have a problem. Squirrel gulped, adjusting his glasses with a shaking paw. That fountain's power isn't just big, it's boundless. Someone's heart is twisted. Without anyone's control, they could become something far worse than a giant. Vinegar was already on her feet now, tail high and bristling softly. And if he drinks from it with vengeance in his heart, he will grow, she said, her voice a low growl. And the moment he hurts someone for fun, he's supposed to shrink. But Nanto stepped forward again, golden fur shimmering faintly with energy as her many tails swayed behind her. What if he knows that? She said. What if he plans to use the fountain just once, to grow powerful enough to strike, before the rules catch up? There was silence, a dangerous silence. The raccoon finally spoke, his voice grave. He wouldn't need long. One act, one moment of cruelty, a single attack. He could destroy lives before the curse even catches them. You could feel the earth beneath your feet pulse ever so gently, like the heartbeat of the forest had picked up. A whisper of unease traveled on the breeze. Even the distant birds had grown quiet. The Malotech, still coiled along the glistening stream, looked up with narrowed eyes. Then we may need to act before he gets that chance. The squirrel, now pacing rapidly across the pole, added, "If he's already there, and if he knows how to lie to the fountain, even just long enough to get what he wants." Hummingbird clenched his talons on the lamp post and looked toward the heaviest part of the forest. We may not doing we may we might like we may not be dealing with a vengeful lizard anymore. We could be looking at a monster, one with a grudge and a body big enough to act on it. He turned back to the others. We need a team, fast, not just to defend the fountain, but to make sure you stay safe. The raccoon nodded. And we'll need more than brawn. That Trico is clever. He's tricked minds before. Yours. Maybe it's even the fountains. The Finnegan growled again, this time not out of fear but readiness. Then we'll need to move. The Ninetales looked down at you, then wind lifting the fur along her regal frame. If what you suspect is true, she said, then the force itself may soon feel the weight of his wrath. But you, little one, your warning may have just given us the time we need. Her tails rose like banners in the wind. We'll go to the fountain. We'll guard it. And we'll not let darkness take root where growth was meant to be a gift. Behind you, the ground trembled again, just slightly. Far off and beyond you, a strange low sound echoed, like leaves being shredded, like something approaching, not in joy, but in fury. Uh-oh, we're screwed. That's probably him now. Hummingbird turned skyward. Everyone! Uh-oh. Everyone, move! Forest giants, your new allies began preparing, not for a fight out of vengeance, but one to protect something pure, and more importantly, to protect you.